All right, get ready for this. I want you to picture a courtroom drama. The plaintiff? Satan. The defendant? God. And what are they fighting over? Oh, just all of humanity. It sounds totally wild, like a comedy sketch. But in the late Middle Ages, this was a real, incredibly popular story. We're talking a full-on celestial lawsuit, complete with legal arguments, courtroom procedure, and even a surprise lawyer for the defense.
And this quote? It just nails the tone. This isn't just some angry demon ranting. This is the devil's lawyer, his procurator, standing up in the court of heaven, basically throwing his hands up in frustration. It's this moment that's kind of funny, but also deadly serious, and it perfectly sets the stage for one of the most fascinating theological stories of the era.
So, where in the world did a story like this come from? Well, it wasn't a play and it wasn't just some simple little fable. This kind of text belongs to a very specific genre from the late Middle Ages, a type of Latin work they called dialogues on salvation, and they were a really unique way to dig into some seriously complex religious ideas.
Okay, so the big thing you got to get here is that these weren't scripts for actors on a stage. No, they were meant to be read, probably in university circles. They blend these really deep theological questions with scenes that feel super dramatic, almost cinematic. And the best example, the case we're diving into today, is a text called the Processus Sathanae, which literally means Satan's lawsuit.
So here's the setup. The story kicks off right after the crucifixion. All the devils get together for a meeting, and they are, to put it mildly, furious. They feel like Christ's sacrifice completely broke their hold over humanity, and they've been cheated. So what do? They don't just sit around and complain. They do what anyone in the 14th century would do. They lawyer up and they sue. Their claim is simple. Humanity belonged to us and we want it back. The lawsuit is filed, court is officially in session, and the devil's lawyer is ready to make his case. But right out of the gate, there's a huge problem for the defense. And by the defense, I mean us. Humanity, the one being sued, doesn't even bother to show up.
And things move fast, as you can see. Day 1, Good Friday. The Archangel Gabriel calls for humanity. Crickets, no one shows. The devil's lawyer immediately pushes for a default judgment. But the judge, Christ, gives us a one-day extension. The next day, Saturday, same thing. Humanity is a no-show. The angels are starting to lose hope. It looks like it's game over before it even starts. But then...
And this is the huge dramatic twist. Just when all hope seems lost, the Virgin Mary stands up and says, "I'll do it. I will be the defense attorney for all of humankind." And now the stage is set for a legal showdown of truly biblical proportions. Now, the devil's lawyer, he's a sharp one. He's not intimidated at all. He immediately goes on the attack, laying out this really methodical, procedural case. His goal? To get the defense thrown out before they can even say a word. And his strategy is honestly pretty brilliant. First up, he files a motion to disqualify Mary. He argues she has a massive conflict of interest. Hello, she's the judge's mother. Second, he argues for interim custody. He's like, look, we had humanity before this whole mess started, so they should be returned to us while the case plays out. And third, he brings out the hard evidence. He cracks open the Bible to Genesis and points right to Adam and Eve's original sin as Exhibit A.
But Mary's response to this is just so smart. On that custody issue, she makes this incredibly fine legal point. The devil claims hell was the rightful owner, the possessor. But Mary argues, no, you were just a temporary holder, a detentor. You were basically house-sitting, and you only had humanity with God's permission. It wasn't about ownership at all. And you know what? The judge agrees with her.
So Mary is winning these early procedural fights, but the heart of the devil's case, that humanity is guilty according to the law, that's a strong argument. And as the trial goes on, she starts to realize that a purely legal defense just might not cut it. The trial is about to take a very, very strange turn.
This is the crisis point for the defense. Mary realizes that if you stick strictly to the law, humanity is probably doomed. So she does something radical. She essentially throws the law books out the window and switches to a completely different strategy.
She stops being a lawyer and, well, she starts being a mother. She speaks directly to the judge, her son. She reminds him of the agony of the crucifixion, suffering caused by the very same devil who's now demanding justice. She talks about carrying him for 9 months. She openly weeps. And then, in the most shocking gesture of all, she bares her breast, reminding him of how she nursed him as a baby. It is a raw, emotional plea that just shatters all courtroom rules.
And just like that, This shocking move reframes the entire trial. It's not about legal precedent anymore. It's not about interpreting scripture. Mary has forced the court to deal with a much deeper conflict, a tension at the very heart of God, the epic battle between pure justice and compassionate mercy.
And this slide lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have justitia, justice with a capital J. That's the strict letter of the law. And by that standard, humanity sinned, so humanity deserves punishment. The devil kind of has a point. But on the other side is equitas, equity, or what we'd call mercy. And that's the idea that compassion can, and sometimes must, step in and override the cold, hard law. That's what Mary is banking on.
As the debate hits its peak, the other two parts of the Trinity jump in. They see the Son, who paid the price for sin, and they see the Mother, who is pleading for us. And their conclusion is this powerful, rhetorical question, which is basically the final verdict. I mean, if the Son and the Mother are on humanity's side, who could possibly be against them? The case is closed.
And with that, it's over. The trial is done, the devil's lawsuit is thrown out, humanity is saved, and the heavens just erupt in celebration, with the whole choir of angels singing Salve Regina, a hymn that famously calls Mary Advocata Nostra, our advocate.
So, why does this wonderfully strange story even matter? Well, it wasn't just for kicks. These kinds of texts tell us a ton about how people in the late Middle Ages thought, how they wrestled with the biggest questions of all, faith, law, and salvation.
The reason the Processus Sathanae was such a smash hit is because it was this perfect storm of everything people cared about back then. You had the super rigorous logic from university scholasticism. You had a total fascination with legal procedure, which was becoming a huge deal all over Europe. And you had that intense, personal, emotional devotion that was so typical of the time. It was the perfect blend of head and heart.
And we know for a fact it was popular because it exists in a bunch of different versions. The one we've mostly been following, the Advocatia, was the most common. But you also had the Mascarone version, which adds this whole other scene with characters named Justice, Truth, Mercy, and Peace having a debate. And then there's the Bartillo version, which is packed with even more legal jargon and documents.
So what are the big takeaways from all this? First, these stories were a way to explore scripture, not with some dry textbook, but with a great story. Second, they made these huge sacred ideas feel relatable by mixing them with the everyday world of courts and lawsuits. Third, they were probably a great creative and emotional outlet for students buried in super technical studies. But the most important point is the last one. The story's ultimate message is that salvation isn't won through a legal battle. It all comes down to mercy.
And that leaves us with a fascinating question that echoes way beyond some medieval courtroom. The story suggests that a world run on pure, unbending justice would be a pretty hopeless place. It really forces you to ask, in our own legal systems, in our own communities, in our own lives, how much are we all relying not on what's strictly deserved, but on the simple grace of a second chance?